This is the November 13th study session of the Littleton City Council, and we have two topics this evening: youth and government presentation, and Mark Behrens will lead that. Mark, you want to go ahead and start?
So I put kind of a description of the day in your packets, and hopefully you have a chance to look that over. It was a great event. We had a great turnout, and we had quite a few projects submitted, and we narrowed it down to 4 top projects. Juliet Tolley is our first place winner, and she's going to give her presentation tonight. And what I'm going to do first is go ahead and go through our winners, and I'll announce them, and then they can come up and get their certificates, and then Juliet can come up and give her presentation.
Mark, do you want to do a quick explanation of what the program was and kind of the genesis of it? And you guys put a ton of work into this before the kids came in, so maybe give just that background.
So we started in late 2011, and Bill Cortez formed a committee, and that was made up of myself, Tim Weaver, Sue Ellen Winstead, Mark Decker, and Rachel Metz. So we met for several months and kind of decided what the day was going to look like, and we weren't sure if it was going to be a day, several days, a commission, and what we finally decided was, logistically a one-day event would be the best thing to do. We met with LPS faculty, board members, and students, and kind of went over what the program would look like with them to get their feedback. And they really helped us out because some of our topics they decided weren't necessarily the best topics for high school kids. One of the things we thought about was medical marijuana because there are so many issues encompassing that. But, it was good that we met with them because they said, no, we don't want the kids participating in that, and parents might have some issues. So we kind of we handpicked some businesses that we thought might have some important roadblocks. So zoning, planning, building, issues like that, placement. So we picked, I think we had 7 businesses that we assigned to the kids. And we had several, Michael did a keynote speech, then we had the departments go through a brief presentation on how they interact with businesses. Then after lunch, everyone came in here and they had kind of a roundtable discussion with all the department reps. So they were able to ask questions based on the businesses they were assigned. Let's see. I guess that's about it. So like I said, we had 4 top submissions. 4th place is Alex Schaffner from Littleton High School. And Alex won a $300 scholarship. Alex? 3rd place is Kyresa Lane. And she is from Heritage High School, and she won a $500 scholarship.
Maybe talk a little bit about what they did? Or is that what you're going to do?
Well, Juliet is going to give her presentation.
Okay.
We probably didn't have time to go through all 4.
Give me just an overview.
But I do have CDs that I'll hand out, and you guys can, a few of them are links to a Prezi website, others are PowerPoints. Yeah.
That would be a no then, huh?
Finish your sandwich first.
It was in the last paragraph of Mark's mail.
2nd place is Kate Albin from Arapahoe High School for $1,200. And our 1st place winner is Juliet Tolley from Littleton High School for $2,000. Yep.
All right. Okay, so kind of like what Mr. Barron said, the task was given to us students to create a business based on a broad business that we were given. So what I was given was a home business, and I had to create a home business based on different aspects of local government that we learned about that day. So with that, I decided to go through and make a yoga studio outside of my home. So I guess I'll just get started. Here is the logo that I actually created myself. The quality is really bad for some reason, but I wanted to create something that would reflect me and my yoga studio. So I was planning on calling it Zen Den, and the motto was finding your core. So here it is, my home business proposal, Yoga Studio Zen Den. Okay, so this is my mission statement. Zen Den is a peaceful and relaxing environment that sets out on a mission to relieve the soul of each and every person who steps within the boundaries of the classroom. We focus on finding the core of the body, the point where ultimate relaxation is achieved. Zen Den hopes to relieve our students of the stress associated with everyday life through the art of yoga and the incredible practice of meditation. Lack of sleep, motivation, energy, and time are many issues our scholars are faced with. In an effort to decrease this, we combine a challenging routine of sculpting exercise with deep meditation. Join us in our effort to release stresses of daily life, one yoga scholar at a time. So the basis of the plan is I wanted to find a target market that I could reach out to, so I decided to reach out to women in the neighborhood within the comfort of my own home, and the studio would be called Zen Den. So the first aspect of Littleton, of local government that we learned about was from Officer Tim Fisher, and we learned about public safety. And so I wanted to assure that the safety of all of my students is always important. So I decided to have some sort of security system, and I went through and found the best security system that I thought would be good. Sorry. And then so after looking on the internet and searching through a bunch of different security systems, I found that Front Point Security would be the best for my yoga studio because it's really easy. It's easy to work with. It's relatively cheap, and it wasn't going to create a big hassle for me to keep in my studio. And then also we learned about the fire department and fire safety. And I know that if I was to have this studio, I'd always have candles running, so I had to make sure that it would be safe just in case a candle were to be knocked over or something like that. Okay, so the zoning requirements was the biggest part of my project, to have to figure out how to work around it, because in the city of Littleton, zoning is it's a big pain to work a business outside of your home. And so when I looked through the zoning regulations, the second chapter talked about while operating a home business, it is restricted to a limit of 4 customers in the house at one time, which was going to be a big problem for me, but I'll discuss that later. And parking shouldn't cause problems or blockage for the neighbors or the neighborhood. And signs are prohibited, so I couldn't even have a sign outside the house that says Zen Den. So to work around these zoning requirements, I decided to go with the idea that I can use these zoning regulations as a marketing tool, and I can go on that, but I'm going to market the fact that it's a small class and you can get individual attention. And I'll also encourage all my students to walk or bike to the location, and I'll get a bike rack so that they can keep their bikes there. And it also promotes healthy living also, because walking and biking is a lot better than driving. Okay, so then we learned about economic development, and there were 2 really interesting people who talked about that. And so I decided to look at the marketing aspect of the economic development of my yoga studio. And so the aim, like I said earlier, was women in the neighborhood surrounding the house And I actually picked a house that was I found on like an appraiser website that was right around Ralph Moody Elementary in Goddard and Littleton. So there will be a lot of moms who could come to my yoga studio who would be not necessarily working during the day, so I could hold classes during the day. I am marketing through the idea that I would only have a 4-person class, which is very important because you can get individual attention, individual yoga attention, and that's very important if you want to improve your skills in yoga. Because if you're doing a pose wrong or something and it's a larger class, then you might not necessarily get the individual attention you need. And with Zenden, you will get that individual attention you need. Since I'm not allowed to use a sign, I thought I might market to the surrounding neighborhoods at the schools at Goddard and at Littleton to moms. And so by means of just like basic flyers on the bulletin board and that kind of stuff. Also, I wanted to use social networks, and word of mouth was the most important thing for my business because I wanted to keep it a small and local business. So I wanted to have all the women in the neighborhood just discuss it at their local book clubs or anything like that and come back and bring in more friends. This just talks about all of those that I was saying. Okay, so 3 other things that we learned about in Youth and Government Day was building and Public Works Department and the Finance Department. So I'm not technically, I wouldn't be building anything because I would just be operating out of my home, so I wouldn't really need to go through the Building and Public Works Department. However, they would need to look at my the house that I selected. The house that I selected for this specific project actually used to be a law office, so it has already gone through many zoning and public works departments, and it has been approved. And yes. Okay, so after all my permit requests have been accepted, I will be thrilled to open up a new and exciting local studio called Zenden. Does anybody have any questions about my project or anything? Yes.
Juliet, do you see having a sales tax license as well? Do you see yourself, yoga worker?
Well, I think at the beginning I would just be working a service, doing a class, and if later on I wanted to go through the process of getting a sales tax license, that would definitely be a consideration. I could sell clothes and yoga mats and water bottles. I think that would help bring in more revenue, but it would bring in more customers, and I'm only allowed to have 4 people in at one time, so that could also be a problem. Any more questions?
Very good presentation.
Oh, thank you.
So how many instructors will you have?
Structures?
Instructors?
Oh, instructors? Oh, just me. I would work all day on this, and I would have day classes. I don't know if I touched on that, but I would have day classes for the stay-at-home moms, and then also later night classes for those who work. Yeah.
So you said they would hopefully walk. So what is
Walk.
your
The,
reason? So they need to be within about an hour's walk to your...
Less, I'd say. And unless it's during the day, they can definitely walk as far as they'd like. But I'm just reaching out to the local neighborhood and the schools that are closest, as to where it would only be a 15 to 20 minute walk tops.
Did you determine how many people in an age group would be within that area?
I really just looked at the specific target market. I think if I wanted to create a whole new different marketing plan and reach out to younger people and not just women but men too, that could be something I could consider later. But as I first opened up my yoga studio, I would want to just reach out to that specific market. And then once I grow, I can reach out to a whole different market, bigger market. Yes.
So, and Juliet, in your presentation, you said you wanted to have a successful studio. So in addition to accomplishing the elements of growth that occurs with your mission,
Yeah.
are there any other parameters that you would need to achieve to be considered successful?
I think there's kind of a personal aspect to the idea of success as to where I'd want my people to come back, and I would want it to be so that they're recommending my business to their friends. And if I keep getting customers based on other people telling them, word of mouth, then I would feel successful because I know that my studio is being talked about.
So I can help carry the message forward, what's your price points?
I looked into more of like getting it open, and then once it's open, I'm not sure. I know that I would definitely market that it's cheaper than Core Power, because Core Power is like $20 a class, and mine would be more around $5 and $5 to $15, something like that. If it's a specialized class, if it's, say, a sculpting class, then, yeah, it would be more like $15. But if it's just a basic yoga class, it would be only around $5.
A little bit more than Lucy in the commercials looking for it to be a nickel.
Yeah, yeah.
Very good.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mark?
Juliet did go a step further. She also filled out any permits that she needed to open this business. She went online, printed them off of our site, and filled them out. They were included, they'll be included in your CDs, but they weren't included in her presentation tonight. Yes?
Did any of your students use the Littleton Economics Department? The business?
They did. Some of the students talked about psychographics, which is not a term I've heard, but it is a real term apparently, and so they talked to Eric Irving about that. So one of the presentations was a horse stable, and who was that? Kate. So Kate talked about psychographics and talked about reaching out to, market to different groups and kind of where that would lead and what their interests would be and how to target them. Yeah, and we had two people from economic development, Joanne Recca and Eric Irving were there for the day. Yeah. Any other questions?
Did you all have fun? Yeah. So who's going to open the business sooner?
Do any of you want to say anything?
Just that this was a really wonderful opportunity. I'm really grateful. It was great.
And you won second prize?
Yes.
Congratulations. Anybody else? Want to say anything?
Thank you so much for doing this. I know it was a lot of work, but it was something very fun. I was able to get creative with it. And I've never really been exposed to local government and all the different aspects of running a business outside of your home. I don't think I'll ever do it because it seems really hard.
It is.
It was a great learning experience for me. It was a great opportunity. So thank you so much for you and to you and everyone who was involved in it. I know it was days work doing that. You were dealing with high school kids. But.
Well, and I think the gentleman sitting next to you, Glenn, he took care of expediting all of the permit applications.
I've heard zoning is a pain.
Anybody else? Well, thank you very much. This was great. And thanks for participating. Congratulations to all of you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You can excuse them.
Yeah, if you want to stay for the rest of the meeting, you can. If not, you're welcome to
Government's really good.
head out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. See you later, guys. All right, take care. Good to see you. All right, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
It's amazing. It's just mind-boggling to me.
It's cool.
That's how I look.
Thank you so much.
Okay, our next, our guest is Kelly Duncan. She's Vice President of Philanthropy with the Colorado Health Foundation. And I wanted to have Kelly come to council and make a presentation similar to the one that I was lucky enough to attend with Metro Mayor's Caucus at University of Colorado Fitzsimmons campus. The Surgeon General came to town that day, and so the caucus held their meeting there, and it was kind of a related to health and how that is supported by communities, and how healthy living and healthy lifestyles are not only individual choices, but they can be also community choices, and how that helps drive an economy. And since we've been engaged in our economic development education, I thought that this is a element of that I'd never really equated in a direct line. And hearing Kelly's presentation, she's able to draw an immediate and direct relationship with the two, and I thought that was fascinating. It could be something we could put in our gamut of learnings that we're gathering. So, Kelly, if you want to go ahead, and I know you've got some handouts, we're happy to help you.
Of course. You can't come without materials, right? I am going to make one request. Don't open this yet, because I have a little quiz. If you look at the...
Oh, I stick a test, man.
Quick, I want to look at it now.
Okay.
I was told there'd be no math.
Ah, shucks. I told you it's hard.
I'm going to stand over here just so I can move the PowerPoint, but I'll move around a little bit. Can you all hear me okay if I'm not right by the microphone? Do you need me right
It's
by the
the people
microphone?
at home that need to hear you.
Then I will stand right by the microphone. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for having me here tonight. It's absolutely my pleasure. And I thought I'd start by introducing you to the Colorado Health Foundation and make the case that we really are not where we need to be in terms of health as a state. So at the Colorado Health Foundation, we have a vision that together we will make Colorado the healthiest state in the nation. And we're very intentional about the word together. We need partners like you to help us achieve that vision. And we've identified 3 community outcomes. You can think of these as goals that we think we need to achieve to ultimately achieve our vision. And we measure our progress using a set of measurable results to show that we're on track to achieving these 3 goals of healthy living, health coverage, and health care, and ultimately our vision of making Colorado the healthiest state. So our goal in healthy living is that all Coloradans have access to the key components of healthy living, and we define those as nutritious food, physical activity, and disease management tools, because these are the keys to staying healthy. And we have 2 strategies. We want to promote healthy communities through culture change, and we think you can play a big role here. And we'd also like to create healthy schools, and we think you can be a partner here as well. And then our goal in health coverage is that all Coloradans have health coverage, because those who do are more likely to receive the care they need. So we go from let's keep people healthy in the first place, but even the healthiest among us will need to access health care at some point, and we know that insurance makes it easier to do that. And the 2 strategies here really focus on public insurance programs and private insurance. So we'd like to optimize the coverage available through Medicaid, CHP+, and other public health insurance programs. And then for Coloradans not eligible for public insurance programs, we want to make adequate and affordable coverage available to them. And then our goal in health care is that all Coloradans receive cost-effective, quality, coordinated health care, because those who do are healthier. And we have 3 strategies there: improve the delivery system with a real focus on primary care, train and recruit healthcare professionals to deliver quality, integrated primary care, and accelerate the adoption of health information technology. So keep people healthy, make sure they can access care when they need it, and when they do access care, we'd like it to be of high quality, cost-effective, and coordinated. So as you can imagine, one of the biggest barriers I have to spreading this message is people saying, well, we're already the healthiest state. They read articles that we're the leanest state in the nation, that we're the most active, and don't really feel a call to action to work with us to make Colorado the healthiest state. But I think you may have some inkling that that is actually not the case. So we'll take a little quiz so we can prove that point. So, according to the 2011 Colorado Health Report Card, what percentage of Colorado adults are obese? Is it 8%, 13, 22, or 35? Anyone want to venture a guess?
D.
C, yeah.
8?
C.
You think it's 22? Anyone else?
D.
D. All right. 22%. And here's the really bad news. So up until this year, Colorado was the only state that hadn't broken the 20% barrier in terms of adults who are overweight or obese, and now we've broken that barrier. And if you go back to 1995, Mississippi was the most obese state at the time, and the percentage of adults who were obese was 19.5%. So our leanest state would have been the most obese state just 17 years ago. So according to the 2011 Colorado Health Report Card, the percentage of Colorado children who were obese or overweight, and these are our kids, resulted in a state ranking of best in the country, 7th, 18th, or 23rd.
23rd.
23rd?
7th.
7th? 23rd. And this, in 9 years, dropped from 3rd best in the country to 23rd best. And I think you can understand that this is a real big problem because, and no pun intended, kids who are overweight and obese generally grow up to be overweight and obese adults, and overweight and obesity is linked to a myriad of chronic conditions that not only impede quality of life, but also cost the system a lot of money. Since 1995, obesity rates in Colorado have declined by 2%, held steady, increased by 10%, or doubled.
D.
Doubled. Not the direction we'd like to be going. And one more piece of bad news. Obesity-related medical expenditures cost us what? $874 million annually, $560 million annually, $245 million, or $55 million. B?
The biggest.
$874 million annually. So, and here's some national facts. Rise in obesity accounts for 27% of rise in healthcare spending nationally. Obesity-related job absenteeism totals $4.3 billion annually. Lower productivity at work totals $506 per obese worker, and Medicare costs for obesity-related illness totaled $19.7 billion, and that was just in 2008. With increasing rates of obesity, that number's only going to grow. So now that I've depressed you, here's
At least you weren't on dessert.
You want a Coke to wash it?
No, we will not let you have a Coke. So here's a snapshot of the Colorado Health Report Card. And just, I asked this to the Metro Mayor's Caucus, but I have a colleague who asked this question. If your kids brought home this report card, how many of you would consider getting a tutor?
Yes.
Yeah. And this is what we're doing as a state. So that we can do better. There's some glimmers of hope. We went from a paltry D+ to a C- for our children, but we also declined from an A- to a B for our healthy aging. So we grade ourselves on these 5 life stages, and we look at data that's collected for the Department of Public Health and Environment, and then we look across other states to come up with our rankings. And you have the report card in front of you. So we still have the lowest obesity rate. That's a great thing. But I think we've talked about the fact that Colorados are getting fatter. And in fact, if we keep going at the current rate, in 10 years, 2 out of 3 of us will be overweight or obese. And for our children, the prediction from the CDC, how many of you have a child or a grandchild who's going to turn 10 this year? Yeah? The prediction from the CDC is that child has a 1 in 3 chance of getting diabetes. And if the child's Black or Hispanic, it's 1 in 2 chance of getting diabetes. So this is something that we believe we should all care about, but we also think it's something we can do something about. We're not where Mississippi is. We're at 22%. That's not great, but we can change the rate of obesity in Colorado, and this is where we think you can play a huge role. So the way we think about healthy Coloradans is we put the person in the center, and what do we need to get healthy Coloradans? We need healthy places. That's creating the environment, making sure we have access to healthy food, making sure we're building safe, friendly places for people to engage in activity. But that's not enough. Just building it won't ensure that they come. We also need to influence behavior. So how do we promote healthy eating habits? How do we educate and encourage active lifestyles? So let's make the infrastructure easy for people to be healthy, and then let's put a little bit of peer pressure on them so that they start to make the healthy choices. And I live in Stapleton. And many of you know that Stapleton was created so that people will be more active. And it's working. We have trails, you trip over parks, they're everywhere. And when my kids were still in a crib, my husband used to get them out of bed, and they would sit in the rocking chair in front of the window, and the game they played was runner, walker, biker. And they would have to guess what was going to go by next, a runner, a walker, or a biker. And you could play that game for a long time in Stapleton. And it works. I see people out there exercising, and I feel like I need to get out there and exercise. So we want the two factors to come together to really help us make Coloradans healthier. So health and economic development is what you asked me to talk to you tonight about. And I think it boils down to location, location, location. And zip code matters. We do Colorado Health Symposium every summer in Keystone. If any of you are interested, it's on our website. We'd love to have you join us. And what we talked about this year was health equity. And if you look at zip codes, they are the best predictor of your health of just about anything else. And a lot of that is tied to socioeconomic status. But Anthony Aiton from the California Endowment was speaking at the symposium, and he was giving examples of zip codes and different life expectancies in those zip codes. And I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and he gave an example in Cuyahoga County, which is in Cleveland, and an inner-city low-income neighborhood called Huff. The life expectancy, let me make sure I get this right, is just 64 years. Drive 15 minutes away to a more affluent neighborhood, Lyndhurst, and the life expectancy is 88.5 years. There's also been a study of 7,000 residents in Alameda County. It's a 30-year longitudinal study, and they looked at socioeconomic status, median income, and life expectancy. And they found if you had an income 1 standard deviation above the mean, you were likely to, you were 25% less likely to die prematurely. If you had an income that was 1 standard deviation below the mean, you were 35% more likely to die prematurely. So all of this matters to people's health. And so I'm going to talk to you today and would love your input and your ideas, but I think there's 5 factors that we can really tie to healthy eating and active living. We know there's positive benefits with these health factors, but there's also a case to be made that this will also stimulate economic development. So walkability. Walkability is defined by how many amenities are within walking distance of a person's home. And they usually use, the measure is somewhere between a quarter mile to a mile. And so they'll give walkability scores for a neighborhood. So when they look at walkability scores, they notice that it increases the value of real estate. That also increases property taxes collected. And above average levels of walkability increase property values anywhere from $4,000 to $34,000, depending on the community. And the health benefits, if people are able to walk more, we know they're getting increased levels of physical activity, reduced body fat, lower blood pressure, increased high-density lipoprotein, that's the good cholesterol, and reduced risks of bone fracture. These are all great things. And some resources for you. So if you want to make communities more walkable, what do you do about it? Well, we have an organization in Colorado called Live Well Colorado, and they're the first nonprofit of their kind in the country, and their sole focus is to reduce overweight and obesity in Colorado, and they have tremendous resources on their website. It's all at livewell.org, and they have a guide to promoting healthy eating and active living in suburban and urban Colorado. So this can help you with policy changes that will promote physical activity, walkability in communities.
Is that Live Well, is that a local
Mm-hmm.
thing? Okay.
Yep, it's Live Well Colorado, and if you just go to their website, it's lots of information. Have you guys seen, they have ads out right now, so where they'll show a person and you have to guess if they're underweight, average weight, overweight. Yeah, and they also have one where people are in bed and you're sort of looking at them in bed to sort of, the whole idea is to awaken people to the idea of obesity. So what they did is they surveyed Coloradans and they found that, yeah, everyone recognized obesity is a problem in Colorado, but it's my neighbor's problem. It's someone else's problem. Very few people could recognize it as a problem with themselves or with their family, and until people see it as a problem for themselves or their family, it's hard to motivate them to action. So they're really looking at first awakening people to the problem and then giving them resources to do something about it. And then there's Designing Healthy Communities, Dr. Richard Jackson. This is a documentary on Rocky Mountain PBS. If you're interested, you can get it from Rocky Mountain PBS. If you have any trouble, let us know. We can help you get that. But Dr. Richard Jackson is now also doing a periodic series on how we redesign our communities. And his whole premise is that we designed it around a car, and it works really well for cars. But that has had a detrimental effect on our health, and there's a lot we can and should be doing to redesign communities to promote health. And I would say to also promote economic development. And so the other category, public and alternative transportation. So this is rapid transit. It's also looking at bike paths, pedestrian connections, and the economic benefits. Regional economic development, improved worker productivity and creating jobs. The health benefits, we see increased levels of physical activity for people who take public transportation and certainly for people who are walking or biking for their commutes, and an increased sense of well-being. I think we've all heard the stories about people with long commutes and what that does to your mental health, and it's not very good for any of us. And so some resources there. Tri-County Health Department has an absolutely fantastic master plan for pedestrian and bicycle plans. The HEAL Library, HEAL stands for Healthy Eating, Active Living at Live Well, Colorado. And then Transportation Solutions, and they've done some work in Glendale trying to increase connectivity between the paths. You've got a great Cherry Creek path. How do you increase that connectivity to the rest of Glendale for both biking and walking? And then public and alternative transportation also includes safe routes to schools. So I heard this data and I thought it was really interesting. In 1969, 50% of kids either walked or biked to school. Any guess on what percentage of kids now walk or bike to school? 13%.
No way.
Yep. And 15% of morning rush hour traffic is caused by parents driving their kids to school. So there's work creating safe routes to school so that parents feel safe allowing their kids to walk or bike to school. There's also been efforts around the walking school bus. Is anyone familiar with walking school buses? So it's parents who say, I want my kids to walk to school, but I can't do it every day. So they get a group of parents, and the parents take turns being the bus driver, picking up all the kids along the way and delivering them safely to school via foot. So we have lots of friends who are actually participating in that, and it's a great way to get to know your neighbors and to get your kids walking just a little bit more. And then Complete Streets. So Complete Streets is really thinking about whether you're 8 or 80, how can you get along, how can you move safely throughout the community if you choose to walk, if you choose to drive, or if you choose to bike. So it's making sure that all that connectivity is there, that it's safe, you have the proper timing of street signals so an 80-year-old can cross the street, as well as an 8-year-old. And there's the National Complete Streets Coalition, and there's their website, and they have lots of information on what can be done. So parks and open space. This is another area where there's lots of data to tell us that parks and open space increase real estate value. That results in higher tax revenues and cost savings. So the Trust for Public Land did a study on a greenbelt in Boulder, and they found that the homes surrounding the greenbelt saw an increase in their value by $5.4 million. And that same study looked at for every foot you went out from the greenbelt, the property values declined by $4.12. So the closer you were to the greenbelt, the higher your property values, and you saw a decrease as you went further out. And then in terms of health benefits, we know that people who have access to a park, we see 25% increase in the number of people exercising 3 times a week just by having access to an open space or a park. So we also know that you get increased aerobic capacity, decreased body fat, increased flexibility, and an increase in perceived energy level, which you can imagine what that does for productivity at work and for people feeling productive and active and getting more done when they're at their jobs. And some good resources there. The Trust for Public Lands Colorado, they have a new Colorado Parks project, and I'm very proud to say that we funded that project. And what they're looking to do is work with communities, typically those communities that are lower income, because as I said, zip code matters, and lower income communities are disproportionately affected. Their health is impacted by where they live. But they want to work with lower income communities to either transform an existing park, activate it. There's this whole notion of fitness zones, and it's outdoor exercise equipment that's permanent in the park, and people can use it year-round. So there's things, they look a whole lot like an elliptical. There's things you can stand on and swing side to side. And often they'll put these near a rec center, and they'll find that people just immediately start programming them, or people will walk around the park and then build this fitness zone into part of their walk. The best example I can give of the work they're doing is in Westerly Creek in Denver. It's sort of on the border of Denver and Aurora. And there's a Mercy Housing, low-income housing, right on the park, and there's some other lower-income housing units around there, all high-rise buildings. And they went over there one day, and they realized that all of these kids were out playing soccer on this old concrete slab with broken glass, rocks. Didn't inhibit them. They were still out there playing soccer. And their parents were dragging hoses from the housing units to grow vegetables, because a lot of these were immigrant and refugee families, and growing your own food was a big part of their life back home. So Trust for Public Lands realized that Denver Parks and Recreation actually owned that plot of land, but they weren't doing anything with it. And they came up with a deal for Denver Parks and Recreation. They engaged the community in what would you want? If we were going to build a park here, what would you want and what would you use? So it was about a year-long process of planning, and what resulted was a partnership with Denver Urban Gardens where they put in 50 garden plots. So the residents now have 50 garden plots, and there's a huge waiting list for more garden plots. They have an AstroTurf soccer field, and a soccer club nearby is programming that, and the kids are on a soccer team, so they get to practice and be part of a soccer team. They have typical playground structures. They have a shade area for adults, and they have a girls area, which we have a lot of feminists in our foundation, and when we got the grant and we're like, there's a girls area, we spent years trying not to segregate girls. Why would we have a girls area? And it all came from listening to the community. And what the residents said was, in our culture, we need a separate and safe place for girls to congregate and be outside. And I drive by that site regularly on the way to work, and I don't think I've driven by yet that someone isn't out there either doing something in their gardens, sitting in the shade structures, or playing on the playground. So it's been really effective, and they're looking to do that in more communities throughout the metro area. And then there's also the University of Colorado, the College of Architecture and Planning. Some of you may have heard of their Learning Landscapes work. They worked in partnership with Denver Public Schools, and they went into every elementary school and transformed their playgrounds into what they call learning landscapes. And they did a study on them to show that kids were far more active on these newly remodeled playgrounds than they were previously. They do a ton of work, not just around the playgrounds at schools, but they'll also do playgrounds for communities. And they use their students, so they're quite cheap to work with in terms of getting a plan for a park and a playground. And then in terms of, one more thing on this is joint use agreements. So if you have a great rec center or a great gym in one of your local schools, a lot of times cities and schools will come up with joint use agreements so you can use those facilities after hours, so they're open to the community, so they're getting double usage. And then worksite wellness. You are an employer, and I would venture to guess that a big problem is the rising cost of health care and health insurance premiums. And we're an employer as well, and we've implemented a worksite wellness program, and our premiums went down by 12% this year. Yeah. We can't tie it directly to the worksite wellness program, but we think it's having a big impact. And so we know that worksite wellness programs decrease medical costs, they decrease absenteeism, and they've done studies to show that the return on investment is for every dollar invested, you save $6 in medical costs and reduce absenteeism combined. And the health benefits, these are mixed. I will tell you there's no conclusive evidence. It depends on how how robust the program is and how good the worksite wellness program is, but for the best worksite wellness programs, we see increased physical activity, improved diet, weight reduction. You can also see people quit smoking, change their alcohol consumption, and also cholesterol changes. So resources here, your health insurers, they have lots of worksite wellness programs that they can provide you. And Live Well did a worksite wellness leadership console. And while it's not here's a worksite wellness program that you can adopt off the shelf and implement, it's got lots of ideas for what people can do. I think the first presentation I did at the Anschutz Health and Wellness Center, the first thing you see when you walk in that building is the staircase. You can't find the elevators because they want people to take the staircase. So that's something that people can do in communities to get people to take the stairs instead of the elevator. Because ultimately, if we can transform our environments to one where the healthy choice is the easy choice, it's the default choice, we'll all be better. And then the last is food access. And this one's always kind of a surprise to folks. But when we talk about food access, have you heard of the term food deserts? Yep. So there's lots of communities where residents in those communities don't have easy access to fresh fruits and vegetables, to whole grains, to low-fat milk products. And it's typically because there's not a full-service grocery store, either within a mile radius in urban communities, and it's a little bit further in rural communities. So what a lot of states have done is create what they call fresh food financing funds. So these financing funds are a mixture of low-interest loans and grants that help food retailers either open up darkened stores, open up new stores, or purchase the equipment they need to change the offerings that they can make available to residents. So when they do this, we see increased real estate values. So in Philadelphia, they really paved the way in this work. And in those low-income neighborhoods where they put in a grocery store, they saw an immediate increase in property values for those homes. We also see job creation. Typically, if you're going to open a grocery store in that community, you want to employ people in the community, and these are often underserved individuals, so it helps to create jobs for them. And then SNAP is formerly known as food stamps, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And when you can get people enrolled in SNAP, for every $5 we spend in benefits, we see a $9 in economic activity because their income that they were spending on food is now freed up to be spent on other things. And then the health benefits, we see an increased consumption of fruits and vegetables. So some resources here. We worked with the Denver Department of Environmental Health. They put together a Denver Food Access Task Force. They have several recommendations. One of them is to create a Colorado Fresh Food Financing Fund, and fingers crossed, we are going to our board this week to recommend that we provide seed funding for a Fresh Food Financing Fund, and we hope that, if approved by our board, that seed funding would then leverage other banks to contribute money to the fund. And we also have a report, Healthy Food for All, encouraging grocery investment in Colorado, that's available on our website. And then information on food stamp SNAP enrollment is the Hunger Free Hotline or the Hunger Free Colorado website. So I'll stop there, but I threw a lot at you, and I didn't make copies of this presentation, but I'm happy to email it to, I think Marlene was the one I coordinated with, so that she can make it available to you since there are resources. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have or suggestions you have. Yeah.
I'll just say that a lot of what you put together here, we hear about it, Dr. Cock. I'm on the Dr. Cock board, and we hear a lot about that. And I'm on the area agency, advisory committee for area aging agency. A
lot of A's.
And we talk a lot about how seniors can get access to health care, to transportation, to food, to whatever. So we get a lot of this stuff coming through Dr. Cog, particularly at our workshops.
Great. And we've worked with Dr. Cog on a couple of projects. They do great work, yeah. You know, one thing that I didn't mention that I did pass out to you was an initiative that we're starting called Healthy Places. So the goal here is that we would choose 2 to 3 Colorado communities that want to transform their built environment to one that promotes physical activity. And the RFP is out now, and that's what's in front of you, and the applications are due on November 30th. And the process would be, the Urban Land Institute is going to work with us to do an advisory services panel. This is one they've never done before, just on promoting physical activity by changing the built environment. And so whatever communities are chosen, we'll get the Urban Land Institute expert panel to come in for a week to work with them, to make recommendations, and then they're eligible to apply to us for some implementation funding.
We have a group of citizens that for over 20 years have gotten together occasionally to some issue or to educate leaders, and it's called Walkability Leadership Retreat. Today, that group of people met and chose the topic for 2013, and it's healthy living.
Oh, great.
And so, and I'm going to ask you, Evan, to give you a call, to make a presentation to that group at some time, and that is about a day and a half to a 2-day conference. And we wish in the past they've had nearly 100 leaders from the city go to, and many of the topics just go to with what you talked about.
I would love to know more about it. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Kelly, for pulling everything together on this. The challenge for something like this is the dollars to get something started and investing in the program are often dollars that don't see the benefits on the backside. So there's no connection between the positive consequence and who spends the money until you get down to the individual. Interesting to have the seed grants for a few communities, but where has this worked where it's, I'll refer to it as self-funded?
As self-funded. I think you're right. I think usually there's an impetus, there's grant funding, either federal funds or state funds or even foundation funds to help get something off the ground. I think in terms of community transformation, I don't know that we've seen too much of it to know where it has worked. So I think what we've been doing is working with Live Well Colorado, and Live Well Colorado also has what they call Live Well Communities. So they fund right now 22 different communities, and it's a coalition of individuals in that community who want to make environmental and policy changes to make the community a place where healthy eating and active living is the norm. And they start them off with some grant funding to pull the folks together. And then some of the policy changes don't cost any money at all. Some, and some do. So I don't know, so Live Well Colorado is absolutely a partner that could help with some of that, especially with the coalition building. I think we have a mission to promote this, so I think we're interested in funding communities that want to make changes to promote healthy eating and active living in their communities. But we have seen a lot of master plans. We funded some master plans for some communities to change the pedestrian and bike path, to change their development plans to promote healthy eating and active living.
It's, I mean, Smart Streets is, you know, as an example, is a concept, but it means, short run, it means spending a little bit more every time you have a project. And something like that ends up being difficult when you're thin on dollars.
Sure.
Where you may represent a municipality. And I don't know how much you know about where we are. Most of our parks and open space are maintained by a park and rec district, which is certainly something we work in partnership with, but is not something that we directly control, I suppose, from a policy perspective.
Yeah.
But they also have some programs around healthy living, particularly around children, and having a lot of getting back to when I was a kid. You showed up at an open field, you brought a couple of baseball mitts and a baseball, and you figured out, you know, an empty milk carton was going to be second base and stuff like that. So, you know, trying to find those things that are kind of mobile that will encourage also pretty good activity, even when you have just a green field. So, that's those things that naturally occur. Just like, you know, as you talk about kids walking to school, those places where they can go and play, and as opposed to all the organized activity. I mean, I love going over to our park and taking a few soccer balls that out of my basement and things like that. So, it's kind of a little bit different.
And some of these resources can also provide you help in thinking about how you get the seed funding to get some of this off the ground. And the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, they have a healthy eating and active living research arm, and they're strong partners with Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign, and she has a Healthy Towns and Cities, Let's Move Towns and Cities, that also provides assistance, maybe not direct monetary assistance, but certainly technical assistance. And then the mayor of Oklahoma City, Mick Cornett, spoke at our symposium a couple of years ago, and what he did with TIF was really interesting, and using some of that to do the complete streets and to promote healthy eating and active living. So I think there's some creative ways that people are looking at financing some of this work. And that's part of what we want to do with the Urban Land Institute is we know that our funding will not fund some of these wholesale changes that you're going to need to see in communities. So we've asked that one of the panelists have expertise in public-private financing to help communities think creatively about what funds may currently be available or how you use some of your funds differently.
Bruce?
I use the word, actually I've got two things, but you use the word promote, which is interesting. I mean, we're blessed, lucky, however you want to look at it. Littleton's got an abundance of parks, open space, trails, rec centers, school playgrounds. I mean, we've got the infrastructure, so the build part of it exists, but the secret sauce may be what tactically have you guys seen that really resonates with the community in terms of upping the utilization of existing resources. I mean, we've got parks, Promise and Progress are big open space areas on the northeast side of town, and I'm sure they get a lot of use as far as the local kids and stuff are concerned, but there could be potentially a lot more utilization, and so I guess the question of how do you take it up to the next level?
Yeah. I was actually sitting here when you had the youth here, Youth in Government. I'd ask them. I mean, if you want youth to really program a space, they're going to have far better ideas for how you get youth engaged than I ever will. And there's whole efforts right now around prize competitions. And so throwing it out to some of your youth to as a competition to see who can come up with the best game to activate a park or the best marketing campaign to activate a park might be a really interesting way to get kids to see the benefit and also to figure out how to use it. There's also been some studies, and I'm going to get this, I'm going to speak out of, I might not get it exactly right, so I'll apologize ahead of time. But it's marketing, and it's figuring out how to reach people in a way that gives them the motivation to get in to a rec center, to use a facility. And Leadville, just last year, had a Biggest Loser competition for the whole community. It was publicized in the paper. The city government got involved, and they had lots of teams that were competing. And so, finding ways to make it a community-wide event to get people to use facilities, I think, is also a good idea. And then Live Well Moms. So Live Well has a group of moms, they call them the mommy bloggers, who are really sort of ambassadors of their message, and they're a great resource to figure out how do you connect with some of the folks in your community who could benefit from the facilities that you do have, because you are lucky to have them. Not every community has that.
I also wanted to compliment you on your magazine, in particular. The article on page 16 is a personal favorite.
Oh, good. Which one? Could you remind me what's on page 16?
No,
Are we allowed to look at it?
No, I'm sorry. You're allowed to look at that one.
what you guys.
Oh, is that Kelly? I'm going to see Kelly tomorrow.
It was going to be an art ad.
No. Well, it sort of is, actually.
Yes.
I live in a pretty much adult community, but in talking to a lot of people around town after Halloween, that where normally they'd be sending their kids out by themselves, this time that's not true. And the same thing with their observation of kids who used to walk to school Now I've got an adult walking with them or a car close by because of the Ridgeway case, and it just becomes very much more protective now of kids walking to school. We encourage kids to walk to school because of the statistics you gave there, but when you look at the downside, is it worth it?
Yeah, I think that's a personal choice for parents. I have seen data that shows that kids are actually safer today than they are in the past. It's just a horrific incident, certainly makes all parents leery. And I think that's why a lot of parents are doing the walking school bus. We're still getting kids to walk, but there is, and it is an adult with them. Yeah.
So how much of this is something that government can affect versus the community just hooking up with some of these connections? The Live Well is open for everyone. What can we do?
What do you want to do? I do.
What should we do?
I think there's a role for everyone. I mean, I think it gets back to if you build it, it doesn't necessarily mean they will come. But if we don't build it, we know that they absolutely can't come. So I do think there are policies. There's work that communities can do with developers around green spaces to be available, trails to be available in communities, sidewalks. There's also, I think some communities can't pass increases to fund a rec center. And so looking creatively at, could you work with your school to make their gym available to community members through joint use agreements? There's lots of policies that can be enacted, and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation with their county health rankings has some great examples of policies that cities can implement to make changes. But I think I'd need to know a little bit more about what your end goal is, and then we'd be happy to talk to you about some policy changes that we may have seen that make that goal possible.
Have you seen folks work through with a particular liability environment? I used to be on the Park and Rec District Board, so I know those joint use agreements with schools is very, very difficult. In fact, 3 of the school districts said no way.
Oh, really?
And that was over a broader population than where the city is. What do you see as far as folks being able to break through some of that?
Yeah, I don't know that I can speak to that specifically, but we could give you lots of examples where people have done that. And again, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, one of their biggest policy changes is for this joint use agreement, and they may even have sample joint use agreements that have worked.
I think the point that Phil was making, though, there used to be joint use agreements with all the school districts, and now they're not.
Not, right.
Because I think a lot of it has to do with liability issues, who's insuring whom. Whenever you've got a recreation group in a school, and if something happens, they both get sued, and the school district said, it's not our responsibility, that's the recreation district, but yet they're named in that lawsuit.
Yeah. I have no expertise in that particular area, but could help you get resources that might be helpful.
I was interviewed not too long ago by a representative from Live Well, Colorado, about what kind of recreational services we provide in the city. So,
great. I'm glad you've connected with them and that they've connected with you.
They initiated it.
One of the things that we had, you were talking about different funding, we did put in a community garden with Conservation Trust Fund money, and most communities in the area, I think, are getting some of that through I think it's GOCO money, right? Conservation Trust. So that, and I think we're looking at the possibility of Arapahoe County open space money being able to use that for playgrounds. And that was interesting. Yeah, Centennial. And we work with Centennial on the Safe Routes to School thing. We've gotten 2 grants, and I think we just got our 3rd grant. So we've got some of those things in place. What are some things that you are seeing communities doing that kind of taking this whole philosophy and really starting to just implement. I mean, nobody has a lot of money right now. We're all trying to piece together this fund with that fund, and can we make this thing happen? But there is definitely a wave and going through. You talked about what Glenda was doing, kind of the creative stuff.
There's also in Globeville, it's sort of the Globeville, Elyria, Swansea neighborhoods. They've looked at some, there was a Lair's warehouse, a florist, and they transformed that into grow house. So it's essentially...
really not the right...
Yeah. I know. And there's another one called Greenleaf. They both do great work, but yes. So in Grow House, they have hydroponics. They're doing aquaponics. They are growing vegetables inside. They also have gardening outside, and they offer community classes to engage residents because it is a food desert. They don't have a full-service grocery store. In educating them about what they do, and then they'll sell the produce to the neighbors. And also looking at, there's a huge opportunity there as they look at rerouting 70, what we can do to make sure that it promotes connectivity and walkability, and that people can move around. I think the Livewell communities all have some really interesting examples, and they're all approaching it a little bit differently. And we've seen a huge push in schools. So thinking of schools as part of the community, we've seen several districts redo their school meal programs. So Livewell is now running that program, but we started it and continue to fund it. But it's an assessment of the school meal program. So one, how are you spending your money on school food, and how can you spend it so that you're not thawing and serving, but actually cooking from scratch again? And the most interesting part is initial evidence shows that it doesn't cost any more money to feed kids healthier food. It's actually budget neutral. And you've also engaged the school lunch personnel who were thawing and serving and feeling like they're really a part of the school and a part of kids' education and kids' health. And also they're also doing things like improving their PE program at schools, and then connecting that school to the community. So if you're doing all of these things in the school, how does that trickle out into the community so that you're affecting the parents and making the school sort of the hub, not for education, but for healthy living in a community? And there's been some interesting work going on in that realm.
One of the things... Oh, go ahead, Bruce.
No, I was just going to throw out, you were talking about the sort of the community garden kind of stuff, but Trail Mart mentioned they've got, I don't remember who it is, but there's some co-op that I think was maybe affiliated with Denver Botanical Gardens that had sort of that share, you could buy shares in it, in that community farm that was a little bit south of Trail Mart. I know they did that maybe last summer or the year before. I'm not sure if they did it this summer. They didn't have any water. It makes it harder. But yeah, I think people are starting to look at that, even in areas that that's more of an urban area, but Trail Mart's more rural. But again, same thing. There's not exactly a grocery store in the city.
Yep. And we've also worked with a couple of other funders in a more rural area to get a distribution hub. So you had local farmers who wanted to figure out how to get their produce to market and just couldn't figure it out how to do it. So they're creating a distribution hub to help get that food to market, and then also working on farm to school, so connecting local farmers with school districts who want to purchase their food. And one thing that Denver Public Schools did is they had 2 empty plots of land that they were spending a lot of money just to water the grass there, and they did a feasibility study on if you turn those into urban farms, could you then sell it to the school food program, because they're typically separate programs, and it looks like they can do that. They can turn those plots into urban farms. They'll produce about 75% of the produce needs during the peak season of farming. It'll cost less for the school food program, and it'll cost the district much less to maintain an urban garden than to water a grass plot. So that's another thing that communities are looking at. And then, if you really think big about it, turning that into vocational education, so then you find a way to educate kids on this urban farming, and it becomes it becomes a career path for them.
One of the things you had talked about at the caucus was how this attracts businesses, how businesses look for this type of activity in communities, and it's a magnet for them.
Yeah. So the Downtown Denver Partnership is obviously very interested in Denver's urban core, and I think attracting the millennials is about place. I think research has shown that they'll move to a place without having a job because they like the place, but what they like about the place is that it's walkable, that you can get to places easily without having to have a car, that spaces are programmed, there's interesting, exciting things going on. So I think all of the things that promote health also promote economic development and attracting young, new workers to an area. Did that get it?
Well, and that how that relates to businesses who are looking for. I remember there was a discussion about that businesses are it's part of their criteria.
Yeah, I think that may have been the Metro Denver Economic Development had the data on that, the woman from representing Tom Clark, but I know that they have clusters around industries they want to develop, and this health and well-being is a cluster that they're looking at developing. So recognizing that there is economic activity, not just in having these amenities that will attract businesses and attract workers to the location, but actually growing businesses that will provide the services that people are looking for around health and wellness.
We did have Tom come and talk to us, and he did talk about the healthy communities and that whole synergy that gets created with that too.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry, did you have you didn't, I thought I saw you. Does anybody else have anything?
And I'm thinking more about examples of communities who have done this well and what policy changes and what they're looking at. And I can get back to you with some more, I don't think I gave you very specific examples, so I can get back to you with some more specific examples that might be interesting. I know the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation profiles 2 communities. I think one is in Mississippi, a mayor of Mississippi who has really sort of transformed his community in terms of promoting healthy eating and active living. So I can share those. I'll email those stories to Marlene with this PowerPoint presentation, and then some policy changes, just examples of policy changes that actually promote healthy eating and active living, if those specific examples would be helpful to you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate being here.
And the presentation, very good information. Well, there's nothing else?
Could we have the city manager tell us, and whoever's watching, the date of the ESI study report, and then how we proceed? I had talked to him before the meeting started to ask if he would do that.
I would be happy to do that. We are currently scheduled on December 10th to have a joint study session in Inglewood. They'll be hosting. We hosted the last joint, so we just rotate back and forth. My guess is that'll be at 7 p.m. At their city hall in that conference room that they have, their version of the community room. And we will get a presentation from ESCI, and there are 42 recommendations, and ultimately the reason to have both groups in the room is so that you guys can talk amongst the 14 of you of what you think is prudent to continue to look at, delve down in. I haven't seen the presentation, so I can't speak to what types of questions or information you're going to receive or have. But that'll be the opportunity, and then in the general direction that each council might give your individual managers, we will go and do that additional work, and we will continue to drill down and see what you all want to do with that. So I'm not real clear yet, because I don't know what you guys are going to think, what Inglewood will think when we get to the end of that. So, but definitely December 10th is confirmed at this point, and the only thing I can't tell you off the top, but I believe it'll be a 7 p.m. start date, but I'll confirm for you.
And it is at City Hall?
It is at their City Hall.
because Keith Gardner and I both showed up at the address given in the email, which wasn't City Hall. And we finally got a hold of a fireman who called somebody and said, well, it's over in City Hall.
Oh, no, it'll be in that standard conference room on the second floor above the library. If there's something different and I find out about it, I'll let you know.
Okay, anything
Yeah.
else? Okay, we're adjourned. There, Bruce, I beat you. 17.
Congratulations.